Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Glad you could be here. I know this is a short turnaround from our last meeting, but it's going to be a while before we have the next one, and I wanted to get things rolling. And this is going to be a little bit more like the cadence that we have on a regular basis. So without further ado, we'll just get rolling into the slide deck. So today's October 9th, and what we're going to cover today is, again, just touching base briefly on making sure you know where the resources are. We'll talk about climate survey and some of the things that are going on with that. Just a couple updates on PSAT and AP as we keep moving forward in both of those particular projects. We'll begin our conversation about access testing, making sure that we've got things in place. And then finally, we'll go just touch base on opt-outs and what that looks like. And I know that some of you have been through this many times. Nothing has changed, but there are others who have not. So welcome, everyone. So again, just making sure that you're aware that you know who's in the department. Sarah and Jamie and I are in the Research, Assessment, and Improvement Department. This is year 2 for that department. Stacy Will joins us from the Student Services Department, and Ben Kolash from Multilingual Education. So together, we all work on and make sure that we've got things straight for you, try to give you the best information possible on a regular basis. So, all right, just again, the resources, there is a high school assessment coordinators resource page. The slides and the running agenda are there. The recording will be there after we're done. So if you ever need to go back and listen to something, some portion of the recording again, it's all going to be there. We'll also put a few other resources up there as well when it's time. If you need to figure out where that page is, let me know, and I'll give you a step-by-step guide of how to get there. So we're actually going to go kind of out of order, but I wanted to make sure this is the big thing for today. We'll be talking about access and the preparation for that. Now, the window itself doesn't open until December 2nd. It closes on the 31st of January this year, or next year, actually. So we've got a nice long window, but we also all know that there are all kinds of things that happen during this time, including such things as winter break, MLK Day, end of semester. We've got new students who typically roll in at the first of the year. So again, just want you to start thinking about how to pull all this together, and want to give you a timeline today of events that happen. Some of these are critical for the district and not for you to worry about at all, but I want you to know that they're happening. And speaking of that, tomorrow is something that happens for the district. You're not to worry about it. So tomorrow, DPI begins the process of uploading, taking student information from our SIS, from Infinite Campus, and pulling it together and beginning to generate the entire roster of English language learners from across the state. They will again pull that same data on the 24th of October. So it's almost like they're preparing one thing and then they'll double check to make sure that it's all there. So again, as new students arrive, make sure that they get into into Infinite Campus, and that you're aware of who all is an English learner in your building. A critical point: on the 24th, if students are not in on the 24th, no problems, except that's when they generate the one and only label that we get for students, especially when it comes to booklets. Now, not so much a worry at the high school, but it's only going to, it'll be more important for those students in younger grades. But I want you to know that, for instance, alternate assessment, we won't have many labels for you to do. So if there is a physical book, there will have to be bubbling. The Assessment Management System, AMS, opens on October 31st of this year. So you will have access to that as shortly thereafter. That's where all the technical side of it goes, generation of tickets, etc. Okay, continuing with the timeline. So again, the 24th is when the DPI pulls all that data. On the 25th, expect to see a roster and accommodation list that comes to each of you or the access coordinators at your building, and it will contain a roster as well as an accommodation list. So there will be, based on IEPs, there will be a list of students who will be getting the alternate access. There will also be other accommodations that will be listed there. The rosters will be something for you just to check to make sure that, if a student is no longer enrolled, that is something that we have a little bit of time to take care of. Keep in mind that just because a student doesn't show up doesn't mean they aren't in the list of required students to test. So if they're a no-show, and you can say, how can we possibly test them? If they're still listed in infant campus, then they are expected to be tested. If they're enrolled, they get tested. So once you get that list, rosters and accommodations, any changes need to be sent back to us by November 7th. So you've got a couple of weeks, more or less, in there to do that. We'll then be working on updating and making sure that all the accommodations are set within the AMS system. And then finally, tickets are going to be printed and sent out to you at each school on or about November 18th. November 18th is a Monday. If you need any materials, alternate access, etc., we'll get a few of those into the district shipment that comes in on the 22nd of November. So right before the Friday before Thanksgiving week. If we have enough, we'll get them all out to everybody. But we'll be definitely ordering more materials once the window opens. So we'll get them ordered. They have a very quick turnaround time. So typically, once they are ordered, we get them in about 2 days. We'll need an extra day to get them to you. So in about 3 days, we can get materials to you. Again, that's based on the assumption that everything flows smoothly. And let's continue. So in the meantime, so that kind of gives you the timeline between now, the events that are happening between now and the start of the assessment window. What needs to happen between now and then is the following. If there is staff that will be involved in giving the assessment who have never done this before, if you have new staff, there's a process that they need to go through in order to get certified in order to actually give the access test. First of all, they're going to need a WISC.edu account. In order to get that, they will need to send a request to WIDA Screener at the rest of the Madison. And that comes to a team of people, and we will set them up for access to the WIDA site. There is a training overview document that is linked into the slide deck, and you have access to the slide deck that says, here's what you need to do in order to be trained. The modules, if you've never done it before, you definitely need to go through the different modules. And so if you're doing the alternate access, that also goes through a training process as well. So please make sure that even if they are not typically a staff member who works exclusively with English learners, you will need to make sure that those who are doing the alternate access are also going through the module. The alternate access has changed in the last year. Last year was a new year for it. That's why the results came back late. So just keep in mind that that does require additional professional development. There is a quiz at the end. So you need to have an 80% to be certified. And then we can check and see who's been certified, who's not. So that's typically the route that a new to access administration proctor would take. If somebody has already been through this once, twice, 15 times, they simply need to go into their wida.wis.edu account, review the modules. They also have to pass the module quiz. So they can kind of skip through things and just take the quiz and be certified. So it kind of is a refresher. It's very important because there are a lot of different steps and a lot of different pieces to the access assessment. All right, we're almost done with the access information. All right, there's always questions that come up. So just want to start out by saying, if there are questions about who to give this to, how to do it, etc., once they've completed training, please email the questions to widascreener@madison.k12.wi.us. Instead of sending it to us individually, to myself or Sarah or Jamie, what this does is alerts a group of people that are on this. It also allows the whole entire group to see what are issues that are common across the district. And so you'll get a better response as far as there will be people who are always monitoring that, especially during the window. And so we ask that you send it to WIDA Screener. There's always the question of off-site students, Madison Promise, their Horizon High School, other different programs. Who tests those students? And that is a great question because it depends. Students who are at Horizon High School, which, if you're unaware, is the recovery high school, addiction recovery. We do not want them to come back to schools until they're through that process. Not necessarily a good environment for them. And so they would be tested in the offsite location. There are other Operation Fresh Start, for instance, will be offsite, but there are others that will need to come to you, and they're expected to be tested in the building. And so if you have specific questions, please make sure that you reach out to us. We'll have several people answering that question, including Allison, who works with IAE. And so we'll be able to, typically if it's an IAE student, there will be testing in your building, but that's not always the case. So don't hesitate to ask the questions. And if we start compiling a list, we'll send that to you as well. Then there's always the question of a student arrives in January, beginning of the year. Student arrives, and the first question is, because we've got access testing on our minds, can we get a new ticket for them? And the answer is not yet. And here's the reason why. Only those students who are actually English learners can take the access test. So the process does not change from enrollment now to enrollment then. So when they enroll, they do the home language survey. If that indicates they need to have the screener, the WIDA screener, then they will take the WIDA screener. If that indicates they are an English learner, then we can put them into the system and get you tickets and set up for doing the access testing. It is not something that we jump to right away, even though you may say, well, it's obvious. They just arrived from this country. They speak no English. So, but we have to go through the process. And as always, there's the question, what about students who arrive late in the testing window? The last week of testing is the last week of January. That's when the window, 31st, is when it closes. If you have new students who arrive that week, I am not expecting you to go through all that process and then give them an English language proficiency exam on top of that. If it's available and you want to, and you want that information, then feel free to do that. Again, following the same steps: home language survey, WIDA screener, identification, and then we can do the testing. But so if they arrive on or before the 24th of January, and I know that's right around semester end, so that's a very interesting time. If they arrive then and it's working, I would say then yes, we do give them the access test. There will be some leeway in there. We'll work with you on that. If you have specific questions, they arrive on the 23rd. Anyways, please let us know if you have specific questions. And then one that always comes up every year is, so we have students who are supposed to take the alternate access test for English language learners. Who gives them that test? And is it the CC staff member, or is it the ESL staff member? And what my response is who knows the student best, so that the student will be able to provide the best possible performance on that assessment. So who works with them? So if they work closely with a CC staff member most of the day, that's probably the person who would be the administrator of that alternate access test. If, on the other hand, they spend more time or they're closer to and you have a relationship with the ESL staff member, then that would be the person that would most likely give them administer the exam to them. So I hope I have addressed many of the questions that come up, but I know that there's always more. So please make sure that you use the WIDA screener to let us know if there are any. What questions do you have at this time? I know that there are plans out there to do the access testing, to do it a little differently than we have in the past. Please let me know how you're doing it, because I'm curious as to seeing what works and what does not. I know there's a lot of conversation about changing it so that students are pulled less from their schools, from their school day, from classes, and using different free periods, so to speak, to do that. Cullen, any questions or anything you want to share?
No, thanks for the meeting, Tim. And I just, being new at this, you explain things in a succinct way, and I want to say that I appreciate that. You had mentioned doing it new. So La Follette is trying to do it new this year. We're trying to make a process that I think was a month long, and we're taking kids out of class for a long time and chasing them down, and having it in different spaces, to a process that we try to complete the lion's share of the testing, Tim, and like in a day. And for that, we want to like clear an area of the building, and try to, impart a sense of seriousness for this test on our students, but also let staff know like this is as important as the ACT for our multilingual learners, and we need the space obviously for the listening portion. And so staff have been pretty good, but we're trying things new this year to just get a lot of it done in one day, and it'll be more of a building disruption for that day, but probably better overall for the test. Fingers crossed. So
yes, no, I appreciate that, and I know that I've had conversations with the folks at West as well about the same thing. That's why I did order. For me, it was a large number of headsets and sent out about 180 to each of the schools, because I know that that's going to be one thing during the day that's kind of the bottleneck, is how many headsets do we have? If you've got 300 students who are testing and they all need headsets at the same time, that's not going to work. And so I know it's not as much as you need, but that's as much as I could add in my budget. So if you do need any more, Tech Services has a list of the headsets that are appropriate for all the Chromebooks. So, but yes, thank you so much, Colin. And I do appreciate the whole concept of changing it up, because again, it was, the students are feeling it as well as the teachers when you pull them out of classes all the time. So, all right, let's move ahead. Climate survey. And again, we talked about this last month, and I know not much has changed except that the window is actually open. The window was opened this week. So all your students and your staff should have received something called in their email, important, your MMSD climate survey link. We've got 4 full weeks in order to do this. And you should, at the end of the day tomorrow, I think they're going to be pulling a progress, or what percentage of your students have completed the climate survey. So you just get, on Friday, you'll get a notification of that. And on every Monday, there will be another email that will be automated, sent to those students who have not completed this. So again, if you have some time that you set aside for them to take this, they will not keep getting reminders throughout the entire 4 weeks, only until they complete the survey. So again, if I'll double check with the survey team to make sure that you get that. If you do have questions, I didn't put this on the slide. If you do have questions or concerns, again, a team approach to this, MMSD surveys at madison.k12.wi.us. So again, there's an email that you can send questions to, concerns to. Student doesn't believe that they've got it, etc. I know all kinds of things. MMSD surveys, all one word, at, and you will be able to get your questions answered. So that goes to the climate survey team. All right. Now, I know that many of you have already been on the meetings for this, so we'll just kind of give you a high-level overview about where things are at with the PSAT and advanced placement. So again, we had a meeting way back yesterday about this, and everything seems to be in place and moving forward. We'll begin with the proctor training coming up. I'll be sending information out to everyone about that. A little later today or tomorrow, I'm going to get communications out, a template that we can begin the process of letting the students know at your building what is the process. So in the template, it will have things like a place for you to put what time the bus is coming, where will it pick up students. There will also be information about what to bring, what not to bring. One of the changes that again, not knowing how each of the schools did it last year, we will be collecting cell phones and smartwatches just like we do at AP, because we don't want those particular devices in the room. So they're going to be testing with a large number of students. We want to make sure that there's no cell phone alarm going off or something ringing, etc., or anyone ever accused of cheating because they had a cell phone out, etc. So we will be collecting that stuff. However, they will have to have their Chromebooks. and they will need to have their Chromebooks. They will need to do a tech check-in. That process will come out in the next week or so that they will know how to do that. But the communications document, I'm going to send you a template, and will be so that will come from the schools themselves. We'll be doing a similar kind of communication as we get closer to the test date from the district. Also, there are, if I remember correctly, there are approximately 10 or so students who are doing at least time and a half, could be a few more. We will be offering a bus at the end of that time period. So you don't have to worry about having the bus that picks up the students who are doing standard time, having to wait for them, or those students having to somehow figure out how they're going to get back to school. So I will be making sure that we have a bus, and that will be leaving later and taking them an east side run and a west side run. I know there won't be many students, but for each student there, it does make a difference. All right, advanced placement, the registration window is open right now. We have, yes, Colin, go ahead.
Yeah, quick question, Tim. Did I just hear you say that you would be responsible for getting our kids home and we would be responsible for getting them there?
No.
Okay.
You just heard me say, I'm going to be responsible for getting those on time and a half, the late testing.
Got it. Yep.
So,
that makes sense. That's what I thought.
Okay. Whew, good. Yeah, because no, I'm not going to be responsible for getting all those kids.
I didn't think so. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Thanks. So I know that we've been met yesterday also with the AP coordinators at each building, and we talked a little bit about this process. You know, testing is going to look different this year for advanced placement, but registration is open through the 20th of October, which is a Sunday evening. I want to make sure that everybody recognizes that. That is coming up as it currently stands. I think we have approximately, there's somewhere over 1,500 exams and more, almost, but not quite 800 students who have signed up for exams. So that is actually a pretty good start. Usually the week prior to the 20th. So that will be starting next week, we're going to really be picking up with the number of students. But please keep that as a reminder for students and staff that this is the time that they can do this. After things close up, there will be a time. We don't want students to do this, but there will be a late registration process, and it's cost them $40 more to register. It's the late registration fee. There will also be a time for if you have a spring course, spring semester course only. Oftentimes it's micro or macroeconomics. If you have that, we will have a sign-up time where students can do that without paying the late fee. So, but we're moving, things are rolling, and we'll be spending more time talking about AP at a later date. And just wanted to touch base once again on these. Nothing has changed other than the fact that, yes, the asynchronous learning has been approved by all parties in question. Everybody is aware of it and has talked about it, and that will be part of the process. TAA, so the site to upload accommodations, is open now. So please don't wait until that is last minute. We're looking at late January. Again, January, there's a lot of things happening. And so the window will close for student accommodations in somewhere around the 24th, I believe. And so it's really a thing to get a jump on sooner rather than later. And again, online testing, the clock is there. You can't shorten it. That's the way it is. We don't know, I don't know right now whether we're all doing online testing for the ACT or there's going to be a mix. I'm working with Jay Affeld to make sure that the head lead principals at each building make that decision. So if you have any input, let them know. We do know that as Shabazz did this online last year, there were very few, if any, issues, and they did notice that their student writing scores were higher than they were in prior years. Coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. So keyboarding has actually been a good thing for most students. All right. Always, we have students who, families who request an opt-out. So here's a couple things about opting out of exams. Number one, in every state and state mandated assessment, we have to enter not tested reasons. So if a student doesn't test, there's got to be a reason why. So we have to share that with the state. So that's true with the ACT, the pre-ACT, the forward, and access. Dynamic learning maps as well. So all of the mandated assessments. The goal is to have 95% participation rate in each and every demographic and service provision group. So again, the all students group is typically the easiest one to say, oh yeah, we have 95% of our students participate in the ACT, the expected students. And but then when you start breaking it down by demographic, by race, ethnicity, there might be groups that are less than 95%, or economically disadvantaged, English learners, and students with IEPs. Those three groups also need to be at or above 95% participation rate. So keep in mind that opting out is something that will affect that 95% participation rate. Now, both the state and the Board of Education have a process and do allow students to be opted out of the state mandated assessments by their families. So the state has a much smaller group, and the Board of Education has expanded that. So any student that does want to, their family wants them to be opted out, will be allowed to be opted out. Now, that request from a family to the school needs to be in writing, and it needs to be shared with myself and Jamie Anderson. This is the same as last year. Writing would be a handwritten note that gets scanned. Could be an email that gets shared with us. It could be, I don't care for this, but if it comes to it, could be a screenshot of a text conversation. This typically happens when families speak another language and there is only one person in the building that is there to explain it to them and ask the question. Now, the note really, if it comes in and says, I would like to opt my son, Tim Peterson, out of all standardized testing, I'm not going to accept that. So it needs to be the ACT, it needs to be the pre-ACT secure, etc. If they don't get it exactly right with the pre-ACT secure, I'm good with that. I know the intention. Now, access testing is a little different. Yes, thanks, Jamie. Access testing does not allow for an opt-out. Now, there's a lot of ways we all know that students can opt out. So it's like, yeah, go ahead and make me take the test. That's opting out. So for students in access, there's a declined to test listed in the platform, that when you get a note or a family pushes back hard on the access testing, send that to us and we will put that into the platform as the declined to test. So that is the process. Now, what's the outcome of this? So On the state report card, if you have less than 95% participation in any of those groups, there's 11 different groups, there really is no penalty. The penalty is you typically will get lower scores, but there's no added penalty. In the past, we used to take points away. However, the federal or S identification process, there is a penalty. Again, what happens is if you don't hit 95% participation rate in any one of those 11 categories, the number of students that would be required to bring it to 95% are added into the denominator. Essentially, each one of those students represents a 0 score. So that is something that will play out in the spring. You'll see that from last year's assessments, and it does affect the status of a school with the TSI groups as well as the ATSI groups. Now, we don't have any high schools with ATSI status, but I do know that each and every one of the high schools has a TSI, typically for our Black students, that identification. And so we need to be careful and watch that. Participation is one way that we can encourage folks to actually do not get that penalty. So a couple different issues with the opting out piece. All right, we're going to just check in and make sure, again, if you have technical questions, if you have pre-day of or post-test questions, send them to us. If you have data needs, go through the school support request process. That will get you the people that you need on it as quickly as possible. And here is our contact information. And so let me know if you've got any questions.
I've got one. This is Ben.
Yep.
So I know that some of the schools are still electing to do paper pencil. And when you do paper pencil, you have to collect all the materials, mail them in, and get the makeup date materials back. When you do it electronically, do you have a window that you can then use instead? So the next day I could, as long as
Yes.
it's one sitting, do the ACT similar to the pre-ACT. We can do it, you know, choose a day or two, but it's within the window.
Yes, and there's a 2-week window around that March 11th date.
Around, so how much is it after?
Starting that, it will finish off the rest of that week and then the following week as well.
Okay.
And I'll
So
get you.
If we have staff, we can continue to test kids, but that's a big
Right.
ask to have a staff member cover for that test. So.
Correct.
I just put the date ranges in the chat. It's the week of March 11th and the week of March 17th. So the full weeks. So as long as it's within that window, you can do your makeups at any point during that window for online testing.
For online. Okay, but paper pencil is still the same.
Correct.
It would be like 2 weeks later. So, you know, right during our spring break usually, and then another window after that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You bet. So again, that's also an advantage if you're working on trying to get all your students tested. There's more flexibility with the online version of the ACT. Doesn't mean you have to, just letting you know. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing. And any other questions for the good of the group? And I'm going to stop recording now.